Hi, this lesson is on finding derivatives of sine and cosine. Before we do that, there are two limits that you need to remember that you probably covered before. A limit as x approaches 0 of 1 minus cosine x divided by x. That limit is 0. And another limit should be a limit as x approaches 0 of sine x divided by x is 1. These two limits will come in play when we are going to do that. Alright, so we're going to use the definition of derivatives, which is going to be the limit definition, obviously. The limit as delta x approaches 0 of sine x plus delta x minus sine x divided by delta x. So we're going to use the formula for the sine of a sum, which is going to give us limit as delta x approaches 0 of sine x cosine delta x plus sine delta x times cosine x minus sine x all over delta x. Okay, so our next step here is going to be, we're going to split that. We're going to take this here and the last one together, so we're going to get the limit as delta x approaches 0 of sine x times cosine delta x minus sine x over delta x. And then our second limit is going to be sine delta x times cosine x over delta x. Okay, so that's what we got so far. Our next step is going to be in the first limit. We're going to factor out sine x. So we're going to have limit as delta x approaches 0. We're going to factor out sine x. That's going to leave you with cosine x, cosine delta x minus 1 divided by delta x. In the second limit, we are going to rewrite that. We're going to write sine delta x over delta x separately times cosine x. Okay, so now we're going to use properties of limits that tell you that the limit of a product is product of limits. So the limit as delta x approaches 0 of sine x times the limit as delta x approaches 0 of cosine delta x minus 1 divided by delta x plus another product, limit of delta x approaches 0 of sine delta x over delta x times limit as delta x approaches 0 times cosine x. Okay, we're almost there. So let's see, this limit here, because it does not have delta x, this limit here is going to give you sine x. This limit here, even though it's not exactly the same expression, it's the opposite expression here from what we have here, so it's also going to give you 0. So times 0 plus this limit here is 1, and the limit of this last limit here, since it does not contain delta x, is going to be cosine x. Sine x times sine x times 0 is 0. 1 times cosine x is cosine x, and the answer is cosine x. So this is the derivative of sine. Let's take a look at derivative of cosine. So what we're going to do, we're going to set it up exactly the same way. It's going to be the limit as delta x approaches 0 of cosine x plus delta x minus cosine x divided by delta x. Cosine of a sum is going to be cosine x times cosine delta x minus sine x times sine delta x minus cosine x all over delta x. Okay, we are going to do the same thing. We're going to take this here with cosine, put them together, so we're going to split it into two limits. So it's the limit as delta x approaches 0 of cosine x times cosine delta x minus cosine x all over delta x minus, now we have our second limit as delta x approaches 0 of sine x times sine delta x divided by delta x. We can factor out cosine x here. So it is the limit as delta x approaches 0 cosine x times cosine delta x minus 1 over delta x minus, and here we're going to write it the following way. It's going to be sine x times sine delta x divided by delta x. Okay, and we're going to use the fact that a limit of a product is product of limits, so we can write limit as delta x approaches 0 of cosine x times the limit as delta x approaches 0 of cosine delta x minus 1 divided by delta x minus, and here we're going to have the limit of delta x as delta x approaches 0 of sine x times limit as delta x approaches 0 of sine delta x divided by delta x. And now we're going to take a look at each one. You probably already realized similar things going to happen. This limit here is going to just give you cosine x. This limit here is going to be 0 minus this limit here is going to give you sine x, and this last limit here is going to give us 1. And the answer is going to be negative sine x. So the derivative of cosine x is negative sine x.